What if your deepest cravings didn't die with your body? What if desire could survive death itself? Across the world, in hidden texts and whispered traditions, there are stories of spirits that don't simply rest in peace. They linger, not for vengeance, not to complete unfinished business, but to feel, to touch, to seduce. They drift between worlds, trapped not by chains, but by longing. Drawn back to the realm of the living by the faint memory of pleasure. Some try to possess the dreams of the living, slipping into moments of intimacy, hoping to reawaken what they've lost. Others feed on the erotic energy of human beings, not out of malice, but hunger. There are tales of seductive spirits who appear in bedrooms, in visions, in dreams. Spirits who take on the forms of former lovers. Spirits who never knew love in life and now seek it through those still embodied. This is not a metaphor, this is not fiction. In the ancient occult traditions, in the shadowed corners of Theosophy, Tantra, and even Tibetan death texts, there are teachings that hint at something deeply unsettling. That craving, especially sexual craving, is one of the most powerful forces a soul can carry into the afterlife. In this video, we're going to explore a topic almost no one dares to touch: the forbidden union of death and desire. Not every soul crosses over peacefully. Some remain stuck between worlds, not because they are cursed or punished, but because they are still bound to sensation. In life, we are creatures of habit. We reach for what feels good, and in death, that reaching doesn't always stop. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the soul passes through the bardo state, a transitional realm filled with visions and temptations. If the soul clings to desire, it cannot ascend. It is said that sexual craving is one of the strongest forces pulling a soul downward, back toward the material. Theosophical writings describe this state as kamaloka, the realm of residual desires. It is not heaven or hell, but a kind of echo chamber where thoughts and cravings take shape. A person who lived consumed by bodily pleasure may find themselves trapped in this layer after death, confused and desperate, not knowing how to exist without touch, without stimulation, without the feedback loop of flesh. There is a concept similar to the phantom limb, but for the soul. Just as a person who has lost a limb might still feel pain or itching where the limb once was, a spirit may still feel hunger in the absence of a body. The sensation persists, even when the source is gone. This creates a dangerous dynamic. The soul cannot satisfy its urges, but it also cannot let them go. It wanders, restless, pulled toward places and people that remind it of what it once had. In Tantra, energy is said to move through chakras, with the lower ones associated with survival and sexual drive. If a person dies with their consciousness anchored in these lower centers, that energetic imprint can linger. It becomes the dominant note in the soul's vibration. The body is gone, but the tune of desire still plays. Spiritual traditions across cultures warn us not only about the pain of death, but about the attachments we carry into it. When desire is unfulfilled, it can create a tether, something that binds the spirit to the physical world. And of all human cravings, sexual longing may be the hardest to release. Some spirits don't knock or scream. They slip into your bed, whisper into your dreams, and touch you in ways no living hand could. There are countless stories across cultures of spirits who don't appear as monsters, but as lovers. They visit in the night, slipping between dreams and waking, drawing close with warmth, not terror. These encounters feel personal, erotic, even tender. But what's behind them may be far more unsettling. In medieval Europe, the church warned of beings called succubi and incubi. The succubus, a female spirit, would visit men in their sleep to seduce them and feed on their energy. The incubus, its male counterpart, would do the same to women. These spirits weren't just temptations. They were said to drain life force, leaving their victims exhausted, disoriented, or worse. But these tales didn't stop in the Middle Ages. In Japanese folklore, the yurei are spirits driven by intense emotion. One type, the ubum, is a female ghost who died in childbirth. She returns not to haunt in rage, but to seek connection. In some stories, she appears as a lover, gently cradling men in dreams, only to vanish before morning. In Tantra, certain beings known as dakinis or yoginis are said to appear in visions during meditation or sleep. Some offer divine union, but others test the practitioner, tempting them to fall back into desire. These entities may be projections of one's own mind, but they feel real, visceral, seductive. Even modern accounts of sleep paralysis describe visitations that are disturbingly sensual. A weight on the chest, the feeling of breath against the skin, a presence that is invisible but unmistakably there. For some, these experiences are terrifying. For others, they feel like reunions with lost lovers or unseen companions. Across all these stories is a shared pattern. The spirit doesn't attack, it seduces, it offers connection, it mimics intimacy, but it is not love, it is need. These spirits are not necessarily evil. They are often confused, desperate, or lost. They crave the sensation of closeness, the rush of desire, the feeling of being wanted. But without a body, they cannot generate it on their own. They must borrow or steal. And so they return to us night after night, slipping through the cracks of consciousness, hoping for just one more taste. What if spirits don't just crave pleasure, but feed on it? In the esoteric traditions, it's long been taught that sexual energy is among the most potent forces a human can generate. It creates life, alters consciousness, and opens gateways. But that same energy, when released without awareness, can attract more than just attention. It can draw entities that exist only to feed. Theosophist Dion Fortune warned of psychic vampirism, where non-physical beings latch onto the energetic field of a person, draining their life force through emotion and desire. Erotic energy, being one of the most intense and unguarded forms, is especially vulnerable. In tantric practice, it's said that those who misuse sexual rituals, especially in the left-hand path, can accidentally create parasitic entities. These are not inherited spirits, but thought-born creatures. They are formed from obsessive fantasy, unchecked lust, and compulsive craving. Once formed, they seek sustenance, and that sustenance is you. Some mystics believe that when people engage in repeated sexual activity driven purely by addiction or emotional void, they emit a frequency that attracts these astral feeders. The act becomes a ritual, the bedroom becomes an altar, and the spirit, once drawn, may never fully leave. There are modern reports from people who claim that during intimate moments, especially during intense arousal, they suddenly feel watched, touched, or overtaken by an unseen force. They report a shift in consciousness, a fog of passion that turns cold when the moment ends. Some feel empty, drained, or disturbed afterward, as if something fed on the experience and left them hollow. This phenomenon isn't limited to ancient texts or paranormal circles. In Gnostic cosmology, archons are said to manipulate and harvest human emotion, particularly from intense experiences like fear, grief, and lust. They don't possess bodies, but they can influence minds, push thoughts, amplify urges. Their goal is not destruction, it's consumption. Erotic energy is not evil, but it is powerful. And like any source of power, it can be seen as an offering. Spirits who once felt this energy in life and now feel nothing may linger near it like moths to a flame. They don't want your love. They want your sensation. The question is, do they feed with your permission or without it? Not all hauntings come from the dead. Some come from us. In the occult sciences, there is a concept known as the thought form. It begins as an idea, an emotion, or a craving repeated often enough to take on a life of its own. When infused with intense energy, especially sexual energy, it can become autonomous, a phantom. a ghost born not from a corpse, but from obsession. Imagine someone who, in life, was consumed by fantasy. Desire ruled their thoughts, shaped their routines, and colored their dreams. If that intensity continues beyond death, it may not form a conscious spirit, but something more mechanical. A loop, a self-repeating illusion trapped in its own echo. These entities don't think, they perform, they seduce, they project an image designed to trigger longing. They appear in dreams as the ideal partner, the perfect temptation, the one you've secretly imagined but never met. You feel drawn, not knowing that what you're interacting with is not a person, not even a soul, but a glamour, a psychic shell created from your own energy or someone else's long-dead fantasy. Glamours have appeared in stories for centuries. Seductive forest spirits, women made of mist, men who vanish with the sunrise. In each tale, the pattern is the same. They give pleasure, not intimacy. Presence, not connection. They vanish when the energy runs dry. These are not hallucinations. They are imprints, programmed with the emotional residue of lust, loss, and repetition. And like a skipping record, they can replay for centuries, anchored to locations, people, or objects that held meaning to their original creator. Some mystics warn that if you feed them, if you return to them again and again in thought or ritual, they grow stronger. Not wiser, just hungrier. This is the danger of unconscious craving. You may think you're alone in your desire, but something might be listening, and it may answer not with love, but with a perfect reflection of your need, wearing the face you've always wanted to see. Some souls are dragged back by unresolved craving. Others never left because they still want more. Across ancient spiritual traditions, there is a warning hidden behind the promise of reincarnation, that the soul, weighed down by unresolved desires, may be pulled back into the cycle of rebirth, not as a divine journey, but as a trap, a loop formed by craving. In the teachings of the Buddha, desire is the root of suffering. It binds the soul to the wheel of samsara, forcing it to return again and again to satisfy longings that can never be fulfilled. Every craving becomes a hook, every attachment a leash. Gnostic traditions go further. They claim the physical world itself was constructed as a prison, a counterfeit realm forged by archonic beings to trap the divine spark. According to these teachings, the body is not a vessel of growth, but a cage of sensation. And the stronger the soul's attachment to pleasure, the tighter the cage becomes. Sexual craving is not inherently evil, but it is deeply rooted in the body. It is primal, powerful, and immediate. And when death strips away the body, the craving doesn't vanish. It lingers, unresolved. The soul begins to spiral. Some esoteric systems describe this as a fall into the lower astral, a dense, heavy realm where base desires replay like a fever dream. It is not hell, it is repetition, a spiritual limbo where pleasure is chased, but never caught. In Hermetic philosophy, ascension is only possible when the soul rises above the lower energies, when it transcends the gravity of lust, hunger, and fear. But if the soul dies still wrapped in those instincts, it may become too heavy to rise. It circles back, reborn in flesh again, chasing the same feelings, repeating the same mistakes. Tantric teachings speak of Kundalini energy, a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. When awakened, it can elevate consciousness. But if left dormant, it keeps the soul fixated on survival and sex. And if a person dies with that energy still trapped, the journey continues not upward, but sideways, into obsession, compulsion, and reincarnation through desire rather than through will. To escape the loop, the soul must remember who it is beyond craving. Otherwise, it may return again and again, not as a choice, but as an addiction. If pleasure can survive death, then so can hunger. And if hunger survives, what does that mean for the soul? We often think of desire as a part of life, something that fades with age or ends with the body. But ancient traditions suggest otherwise. They hint that the soul is shaped by what it craves, that what we love, fear, and long for most deeply becomes the architecture of our afterlife. This is why spiritual teachers across cultures warned not just about actions, but about attachments. What you cling to in life follows you into death. And when that attachment is sexual craving, it doesn't always take the form of memory. It can become movement, behavior, a haunting. The implications are unsettling. Your thoughts may not die with you, your patterns may not dissolve. If you spent your life chasing pleasure, your spirit may continue the chase long after your body is gone. This isn't just about ghosts. It's about energy. It's about the trails we leave behind. Every act of craving generates a ripple. Every repetition becomes a rhythm. And that rhythm doesn't necessarily stop at death. It's not about guilt or shame. This isn't moral judgment. It's metaphysical gravity. What you habitually desire becomes a gravitational pull on your soul, and the deeper that pull, the harder it is to rise above it. Sex is sacred, but when it becomes obsession, it binds. When it becomes addiction, it anchors. And when the body dies, the craving doesn't disappear. It just loses its outlet. That's when the soul starts reaching, wandering, feeding, becoming something else. This is the hidden cost of unchecked desire. Not just what it does to your life, but what it might do to your death. You've just explored a subject that most people will never hear about. Not in school, not in church, and certainly not in polite conversation. But the question remains, if spirits can crave, if pleasure can echo beyond death, then what does that mean for us now, while we're still alive? Maybe it means the way we handle our desires matters more than we think. Not just for our sanity or our relationships, but for what comes next. This wasn't just a story about ghosts. It was a mirror, a glimpse into the architecture of longing and what it might leave behind. If this stirred something in you, if you felt that eerie recognition, like you've known this truth all along, then don't stop here. If you want to delve deeper into the self, this next video is for you.